Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint. I have with me Arundhati Bhattacharya of State Bank of India. India's banking system, demonetization and its integral part to the economy has been a big talking point here in Davos. So I'm going to talk to Ms. Bhattacharya about just that. Let me start by asking you what you make of the global mood here. There's a high degree of uncertainty. And do you expect that will impinge on global growth and therefore also hurt the rest of us involved, including India?
Well, that could happen because today the mood is really uncertain. People don't know what's going to happen. On the one side, you have a new president taking charge in the US. On the other side, you have Ms. May, who came here and spoke about hard Brexit, though she did declare that the UK is open for business.
Yes.
You see Europe slowly getting a little healthier and wanting to continue with their easing regime. So there are very many different kinds of things that are happening. You also saw a very high-powered delegation here from China.
Absolutely.
And the president actually gave a call for globalization. Okay, so there are different kinds of pulls from various parts of the globe, and as a result, people are a little unsure as to how things will happen. Having said that, I still think most people do believe that growth is important for their own people, for the prosperity of their people. So I don't think that's going to be held back because of political uncertainty.
No, in fact, we're seeing the few business leaders that were here from the US seem to be fairly positive and confident about growth coming back to the US in an even more accelerated way because of President Trump's, fiscal stimulus plans, or at least the pronouncements on that front, so to speak. So, I'm curious, where do you think India stands in all of this? The buzz on India has been very low for the last 2 years here in Davos. That could probably be because we have no major problems, or it could be because we have not really done enough to re-attract the world's attention.
Well, I think it's more towards the latter than the former. I think we do have problems. We have problems of trying and getting growth back up. And I think that is something that we need to do as quickly as possible, given the kind of youth that are joining the workforce on a daily basis. But I think India has gained some amount of attention, at least this time, on account of the very bold moves made for both demonetization and the GST, both of which are expected to actually be favorable for business in the long run. People do realize that demonetization has sort of acted as a brake, but everybody is inclined to agree that this is a temporary break, that going forward it will add to the sustainability of businesses.
Let me ask you about demonetization. There are too many things right now that are too confusing about it to really be able to draw a conclusion or judge what the impact of this has been. What are the numbers you're using to guide yourself to being able to understand whether this is working or it's not? Because we didn't expect 15 lakh crores to come back. Most of it seems to have come back. We don't have the final numbers. We don't have the final numbers because RBI is still reconciling data, and we're not sure why it's taking them so long to reconcile data. Bloomberg just recently did a story which suggested that more money has been withdrawn from banks than is currently equal to the currency in circulation. So that's again astonishing, that how could this, and this is in the government data, this is in the RBI data. So it isn't as if we have these numbers from some inside source. It's terribly perplexing. What are the numbers that you're basing your assessment on?
Well, if you look at numbers, means we believe that something like 10 lakh crores has come back into circulation.
That's it? Come back into circulation?
Yes. Of the 15 lakh crores that was supposed to be taken out, 15.4 lakh crores that was supposed to be taken out, we believe around 10 lakh crores is back in circulation.
This is new currency that's been printed? So 10 lakh crores has been printed?
Yeah.
Because the last available numbers were somewhere between 5 to 6 lakh crores.
No. I think, of the amount taken out, and that could be, if I'm talking about the deposit and the withdrawals taken together, I think, of the amount that came in, about 10 lakh crores has got back in. This will include the smaller denomination notes as well. Okay. 10 lakh crores is back in circulation. The total circulation is around 10 lakh crores. Okay. So if you're looking at how much more is required to maintain or to restore normalcy, I would say that by end February there will be enough cash in the market to ensure that there is full normalcy where exchange of transactions take place. Okay. And regarding other numbers, GDP We believe internally for the year will be around 6.7. That's our internal assessment. However, we do believe that from the second quarter of next fiscal, we will see accelerated growth again.
Okay, just to understand your first point, so you're saying that of the 15 lakh crores that came back to the system or back to banks as deposits,
which is supposed to come back to the banks.
Correct.
I don't know how much exactly came.
Yeah, so
Okay.
of those now, this was all 500 and 1,000 rupee note deposits, right?
See, 15
So
lakh
only
crores was
5
there.
lakh crore-
No, 15 lakh crores was there in 500 and 1,000.
Right.
Okay. Some of it was already in the banks.
Right.
Okay. Not all 15 lakh crores was in
out
the hands of the public.
right.
Now, whatever came back, I've not got the exact
Because
number
RBI is
because
not-
RBI
yes,
is not.
but
given.
let's assume it's somewhere in that region.
But
because the last-
today the amount in circulation, including the small denomination notes, and believe me, a lot of new small denomination notes have also gone back into, has also been put into circulation. If you remember, in the first 2 weeks, or maybe even 3 weeks, we were putting out a huge amount of 100 rupee notes. So today the amount in circulation totally is around 10 lakh crores. That's the number, I think.
But
That
so
is
10
correct.
lakh crores doesn't necessarily correspond with 15 lakh crores because 15
It
lakh
doesn't
crores
have to. It doesn't have
represented
to.
only the 500 and 1,000
That's
rupee
right.
notes, right?
The
I
overall
think
number was something more closer to, I think, 17 lakh
18,
crores.
yes, 18 lakh crores was the total currency
That's
in
right,
circulation
that's
or
right,
something
that's
like
right,
that.
that's
So now
right.
we've got only 10 back.
That's right.
So that's close to 50%.
That's
and you're
right.
saying by the end of
It's
February.
more than 50%. It's
More than 50%. And by the end of February, you're saying we'll be back at previous levels.
That's right. Not exactly the same previous
But
levels.
close to previous
but
levels.
close to previous levels.
Close to previous levels.
Yeah.
So are you saying then that these withdrawal limits that currently continue to apply on citizens of India will also possibly be relaxed only around then?
No, it's already getting relaxed. It's getting
Little
relaxed
by
every
little, but
15 days. Every 15 days, I think, the frequency of the relaxation, in fact, will also go up now. Already it's getting relaxed on almost a 10-day basis or a 15-day basis. And as and when people become more comfortable and less inclined to draw as much as they are being given, I think these limits will also get relaxed.
Why has RBI not been able to give us data? I cannot hold you, I cannot ask you to respond on behalf of RBI, but maybe you understand this better than any of us do, because we're all very perplexed. This is real-time banking, ma'am, and we aren't able to understand why the central bank can't reconcile balances across
It's
banks.
not only that. I think there are certain areas that the RBI still has to take a call. If they have not taken one, I'm not too sure whether they have. I know that there are some neighboring nations which have some stock, such as Nepal and Bhutan. I also know that till March 31st, certain exchange counters are still open in RBI. There is also a question of the district cooperative banks, where in the first few days they had exchange notes which they were not allowed to. So I think RBI needs to take a call on these issues before they've come up with those final numbers.
As you all were individually at SBI reconciling bank balances or deposits with money that's gone out, etc., did you all come across any discrepancies? Because we're all wondering whether
No.
the original data we had was in itself flawed in some fashion.
No. We have not come across anything major. There could be minor discrepancies, but those things are, individual, and it depends upon the particular area. Nothing major.
In a previous interview you did with my colleague Ira, you said that, of the deposits that had come to the banking system, you had originally estimated that about 10% will stay and the rest will get withdrawn over a period of time as the new notes come in, etc. And then you said at that same very point that you said, but most other bankers thought it would be more likely that 40% stayed with banks.
That's right.
Are you still staying with that estimate, or based on the withdrawals that you're now seeing, because some money has already gone back into the system, you might want to readjust that?
No, I think, it'll be anything in between that. It's very difficult to tell you the numbers still.
Sure.
Because this is something that will only evolve over a period of time. And we really don't know how much of this money came out of savings and how much of it came from actual businesses. If it came out of actual businesses and those businesses have still not transformed to the electronic medium, then the cash will get taken out. So it's very difficult to really estimate this at any point of time. I think we need to give it till the end of March to really come up with the right number as to how much stays in and how much gets taken out.
Okay, again, connected to demonetization, have you seen, now that we've had 2.5, 3 months almost, of the impact analysis, are you seeing stress on the small and medium enterprise segment? Are you seeing businesses that traditionally survived on cash now trying to figure out another way of existing, for whatever reason,
Yes.
trying to figure that out? As a result, will you see NPAs in that sector across the banking system go up?
See, there are a number of companies that have relied mainly on cash.
Yeah.
Many of these companies also have not really been following the rules, and therefore, they have been sort of avoiding paying taxes. Many of them may not also be, paying the workers the right amount that they need to pay, and therefore, when these things have to be done, they obviously need to rework the margins on which they can work.
Yeah.
So they have to find other ways of saving costs so that they can retain those margins. Now that means that the business model may probably need a little tweaking, little reworking. So I think that kind of business will definitely see stress for a little while.
Are you seeing it show up in numbers?
See, it is not yet showing up in numbers. These things normally come into the bank's books with a lag. And that's the reason why we have not seen any of these things impacting the bank's books as yet. But we do expect that in the quarter that we are in right now, that is the March quarter, we will see some amount of stress. People have also come to us requesting extension of their working capital loans because liquidity has dried up. They haven't received payments that they were supposed to have received. We have already made that available. Wherever it is possible and feasible for us, we have extended them at least 20% over and above their limits to give them that liquidity that had disappeared. And we are hoping that that will have a beneficial impact and they will be able to get back on their feet. But actually speaking, we need to be a little more watchful and we need to wait for a little more before we can
But you said some
assess.
amount of stress is already visible in the March quarter. Can you give me a sense of when you say some, what that means, or it's too
No,
difficult?
it's too early. It's too early to tell you how much exactly it would be. It's too early.
Because the NPA problem doesn't seem to have started. It hasn't even started ebbing as yet. I mean, I think if you look at some of the private sector bank earnings that have been announced in the week gone by, in some banks it's only gotten accentuated. Of course, your earnings have yet to be announced, so I can't ask you for what that number will be or whether there has been an improvement or not. But it does seem as if the problem isn't going away, nor has it stopped enhancing or intensifying, and now demonetization could mean the business models of several SME businesses would go out of whack, and you might have that added on to the existing NPA issue, which was mostly only large businesses so far.
No, I think, demonetization will not have that kind of an impact on the large businesses. It is
on the smaller
SMEs.
businesses. Yeah, no, I'm saying
it is
so
on
far
the
the
SMEs.
NPA problem was more of a large business one.
SMEs also were under stress. They had stabilized. Actually, in respect of the large businesses, we were expecting that they would be still able to turn around and make things good. But because the growth did not come back to that extent, at some point of time it was required that we recognize them and get ahead. So maybe these banks are recognizing them a little later than we have done. So I don't think there is anything very different that has happened this quarter. It's not as though the stress has gone up hugely. There is stress, but that stress is mainly in the smaller units. Agriculture more or less is not, the stress is the same as it was earlier. It's not something that has happened, that has gone up hugely. P segment, that is the personal segment, has again not been impacted to a great extent. But yes, there is this SME piece that we need to be watchful about and see how it pans out.
So it's fair for me to conclude that whilst the NPA problem has not stopped intensifying, in fact, one potential collateral impact of demonetization on the SME business model will only make this problem worse for the banking system.
No, it could. I'm not saying it will. We have to still wait and see, because this was a very short-term impact. It's not something that has happened over a period of time. Most businesses can manage a 2-month downturn. Okay, what they cannot manage is a 6-month, 8-month, 1 year downturn.
But for those whose business model in itself is now in question.
See, those businesses must already be on the edge.
That's what I'm
saying. If they cannot
yeah.
even manage a 2-month stress, then they are already on the edge. So either today or tomorrow they would have issues. Okay, so as I said, it's very difficult. Yeah, very difficult to exactly assess. I think if we wait for a quarter or so, we will be able to give a much better picture as to how things will pan out.
Speaking of NPAs and NPA resolution, I was just talking to Prashant Ruya of the SR Group 2 days ago. He said SR Steel is in the process. The debt of SR Steel is in the process of being restructured. That's good news for SBI. I think you're the biggest lender to that business. It's about 40,000 crores. Not all of it is yours, but it's about 40,000 crores in debt. But this is not happening under the S4A or even the revised S4A modality. It's happening outside of that. And so I wanted to ask you whether it is becoming challenging to find the right kind of S4A candidates, and whether banks are therefore choosing to do the restructuring outside, which also means that the benefits of S4A are not available then to banks and being able to normalize.
Yeah, because
those.
S4A is very restricted. You have to have, means if you've seen the rules there, it is framed in a manner that it's very difficult to find exact fitting cases to go under S4A, because you are allowed S4A only if 50% of the
debt is sustainable.
Yeah, is sustainable. So if you have 49% sustainable debt, you can't fit it in. Similarly, you are not allowed to reduce the rates of interest.
Yeah.
Now, that's not something that will work with already impacted unit. There are a few other things in S4A that doesn't really, give itself to being used for the resolution of some of these larger assets. So the banks will take the hard way out. We will go in for deep restructurings if required, and we will just continue. The only thing is that if you do a deep restructuring, it remains an NPA till such time as it starts functioning properly again. So that's okay, we will continue.
So would it be fair to again say we have one S4A candidate, one S4A company, which is HCC?
There will be a few others.
There will be a few others, but
yes.
more will happen in the deep restructuring mode than the S4A mode?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
right.
Can you give us any kind of update on SR Steel? Because I understand
No,
some of the debt is also being
as
converted into equity.
As it is, I don't speak on individual accounts, and I don't think I can do that now.
Okay, but in that case, and while you may not comment directly on that case, in that case and a few others that we've been talking about or sort of getting into information on, there is still an element of the bank converting some of the debt into equity. I'm not really sure how successful that's going to be, because equity is venture capital, and why banks want to actually go down that route ever is perplexing to me right from the beginning of the conceptualization of S4A. Are you comfortable really with converting some of this?
Because frankly speaking, when you are taking a write down, you also want to be able to capture the upside when it comes. We believe many of these units will be able to do very well in the future, because most of them are in the core sector. India is on the cusp of very big growth. That being the case, I see no reason whatsoever why the bank should not try and capture some of the upside. If you are there on the downside, you must get something on the upside, and that can only happen if you are an equity holder. As a debt lender, you can only get fixed rates of return.
So you see more comfort in doing that equity participation bit in more restructurings from here on?
Sure.
So we're going to see more of that in the restructurings from here.
Surely.
Okay, in the credit growth market, I'm curious to know. Actually, I have two questions. Credit growth market is one, and to go back a little bit to demonetization, one of the things you had mentioned, I think, here in Davos in one of the panel discussions was that the day after the withdrawal limits were enhanced, you saw a sort of a decline in the digital transactions data.
Yeah.
Right? Have you continued to see that? It's been only a couple of days, but
no,
do you believe
actually,
that?
Since then, I have not followed up the data, because I've been here in Davos for the last 2 days.
Okay.
So I really don't have any idea about
as the
data.
withdrawal limits get relaxed further and further,
it could happen. It could happen. That is a risk. That is a risk that we have, and that's why need to somehow incentivize people to stay with digital and not slide back into cash.
Okay. What are you seeing in terms of the loan inquiries on home loans, personal loans? Are we getting
It is reverting back to normal, but I won't say that it has exceeded the levels that we saw in October.
It has not.
No.
So what is then you said 6.7% GDP growth estimate, right?
That's right.
How long will it take for us to get back to, we were on the trajectory of 7.5, maybe
think,
even 8?
I think going back to normal, going back to October levels will happen by say end March or maybe the quarter next. To get much more growth into the system, we are looking at the second quarter of the next fiscal.
Okay. Are you being able to pass on some of the, we've seen the banking system work on the transmission issue and cut rates considerably in the last few weeks. I think, are you being able to pass that on to current corporate borrowers? Because some of the companies I was talking to here said, it's not yet started working. I mean, it's only applicable on new loans, not necessarily applicable
it's
on...
applicable whenever your loan gets reviewed. All loans get reviewed every year. So whenever the loan gets reviewed, it automatically will take the current rate.
Okay.
If you want to do something
ahead of that,
you have to pay a switching fee and switch to the lower rates.
Okay.
So, and in many cases, I'm told some of the banks are also waiving the switching fees. So, it's a question of how soon you can get there, but it will happen.
Okay. I think Bank of Baroda is offering a lower home loan rate than
That's
yours.
only
Is it?
for
Right
the
now it's
very
become very
best customers. That's
Okay.
only for the top rated customers.
Okay. So I'm a little restricted in asking you any more questions because I know your quarterly earnings are going to come up. But I still want your candid sort of assessment of did we gain more out of this demonetization exercise than we lost?
I think so. I think so, because we are looking at not a very short-term view, but a medium to long-term view. There are 2 or 3 things. I think 4 things basically that you can say were the benefits of demonetization. One, of course, is basically you will be able to expand your revenue tax net. Okay, so that is something that's very material. Because in a country like India, 1.3 billion people, only 4% taxpayers, that's too little. You cannot really develop a country with that kind of revenue. So I think that revenue net will grow wider. The second thing that's going to happen is that the liquidity in the banking system, it's unprecedented. We have never seen anything like it. So that does improve your lending ability. It does improve your ability to cut rates for transmission. Liquidity is very basic to transmission, and that is something that is already showing up. The third thing I think is this move to digital. Worldwide now everybody is moving to digital, and digital has its very clear advantages. So this movement towards digital, we did more of digital in those 50 days than we have done in the past 2 years. So there was a very focused effort to move people to digital. And the last but not least, I think, is financial inclusion. Because financial inclusion doesn't only mean opening of accounts. It actually means routing your transactions through your accounts so that we can do what is called flow lending. So you start lending people based on the flows in their accounts. And that is when the people actually get empowered, because you do not want them to slide back into the moneylenders' clutches whenever they have a need. And that would happen if there is no history of their accounts. So unless and until more and more people start transacting in their accounts, there's no way that you can have and achieve actual financial inclusion. So I think that's another piece that we continue to sort of not really give any weight to. But I think, I was in Assam just before coming, and I was in one of the tea estates where we had opened the accounts of all the tea workers. Now this is an estate that's been there for the last 200 years. The tea garden workers get paid every week. Okay, and they get paid in cash. And one of the media people over there told me that, Madam, would you say that for the first time in 200 years, independence has come to these workers? So you can understand how enabling it is, in order for these people to have bank accounts, to put their earnings in the bank accounts, to enable people like us, the bankers, to understand how much more money I can give them in their times of need. So I think, this is something that is happening across the board. It's happening in many, many areas. One of the recommendations we have made to the government also, that the government should now pay in whichever way the government is involved in industry. They should ensure that all payments are done only through accounts and not through cash. And even if that happens, there will be a lot many more enabled and empowered people than were there before. So I think these are the advantages of demonetization. We need to look at it from a broader perspective.
Okay. One last word on the budget. There is talk that the government might look to enhance public expenditure, especially on infrastructure. It might come at some relative cost to fiscal discipline. The expectation was that they would go to 3% in the coming fiscal. Now people are saying, look, even if he stays at 3.5%, it's all right. What's your personal view on this?
I think at this point of time, government will need to give a fillip both to consumption and to investment. So for that, if they stay at 3.5%, the sky is not going to fall.
All right, we'll let that be the last word. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us here on Bloomberg Quint. Have a good trip back home.